You are good to go.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful day. This is a first for us in quite a while. It's a hybrid meeting, the first I've ever attended. And tonight we'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. The Development Commission, as you can see, is live in City Chambers, and the Planning Policy is still virtual. Comments at tonight's meeting may be made in person or virtually. For all who would like to speak during public comments, speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking. If you are attending virtually by computer or by phone and would like to speak during public comments, in addition to the above, please mute your microphone when not speaking. And if you're having any technical issues, try joining the meeting using a different device, such as a smartphone or tablet. You can also use the call-in information in the meeting invite to call into the meeting. Kristen, will you please call the roll for the Planning Policy Commission?
Yes. Commissioner Monahan?
Here.
Commissioner Milligan?
Here.
Commissioner Bader?
Here.
And Chair Voice?
Here.
All are present. Thank you.
All right, so we may have a few glitches because, again, this is our first hybrid meeting, but I believe roll has already been taken for the Development Commission because, as you can all see, you can see them. Do I have that right?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So now we're going to head into public comment, and I want everyone to understand this. The public comment right now is just for general comments for the Planning Policy Commission alone. So please keep them general. This is not about Title 18. We will have a public hearing for that momentarily. Again, this is just for the planning policy, and these are general comments for the good of the order. Kristen, do we have anyone signed up to speak to make general public comments?
Chair Voice, this is Tisha here in the council chambers. I'll provide the support for the public participating. So we do have a few folks in the room here who've indicated a desire to speak. And then do you have some comments, some directions for our virtual public participants? If not, I can give them instructions. Oh, Chair Voice, you're muted.
I'll have you give the instructions, Tisha, as far as being able to call in. But again, I just want to point out to everyone, whether they're there in person or virtually, again, this is general public comments. We are looking for policy directives for the planning policy. Again, we will get to Title 18 here momentarily, but please keep these general. I'd hate to have to step on your comments by unmuting myself.
Okay, and for the members of the public who are attending virtually, if you'd like to make comments tonight, please raise your virtual hand or send me the host a chat message. So we'll start with the in-room attendees. The first person who signed up to speak is Hossein Kotaram.
Is that right? Okay. Well, fellow commissioners, thanks for having me. Staff, thank you very much. My name is Hossein Koram. I'm the owner of Milano Issaquah Apartments, an apartment complex on Newport Way. I'm here to talk about the general adopting the new land use code. Mr. Chair, if I'm wrong, stop me. I think I'm in the right place. I don't know, but you tell me. I believe that a lot has happened in our state. We have been in a state of COVID emergency for 3 years, and the land use changes have been slowed down, and the process have been slowed down. We got a situation that everything takes 2 to 3 times as long. There are economic challenges, there are inflation, there's a hardship on a lot of different people, but most importantly, the process have slowed down significantly. And I believe that just like other agencies have done, I believe that the adopting the new land use code is the best to be delayed for a period of 6 months for the existing projects in a pipeline. And I would explain why. One of those projects is mine. We've been in permitting for literally 3 years. We applied for site development permit about 2 years ago. I just found out about this land use change about a little over a month and a half ago. We're struggling to get it into the building permit phase so we can be vested. But the problem is there's just a lot of questions that we have. And in the old days, when we had a situation like this, we would have a meeting with the staff and my consultant teams, in really one sitting, we would be able to get it all sorted out. But as you can see, the state of emergency that COVID has caused actually is prohibiting that. I cannot even meet with my own architect. He didn't show up the last time I was here. He wouldn't show up. He's afraid. So I don't blame that. There's nobody to blame. It is what it is. So I just want to tell you that, like City of Seattle, delayed adoption of the International Building Code by 6 months to 2021. International Building Code is a significant code that governs all construction and development for basically the entire world. And to delay that for 6 months because of COVID is a big deal. And also, different municipalities like Shoreline is considering COVID as an extension for the permits. It has caused delays. And the reason that is important, if you want to get to the mechanics of it, is under RCW, again, I'm not an attorney, I didn't use an attorney, these are just my common sense views. On the RCW, there's RCW 36.78.020 planning goals. It says that permits application for both state and local government permits should be processed in a timely and fair manner to ensure predictability. So if we're here to change the rules for a project that's been in the pipeline for 3 years on a short notice, is unfair, it creates challenges, and it creates unpredictability for the future developers who come in to take a look at this. I just talked to another developer friend of mine yesterday, and he's got a project going on, and he said, I asked him, in Issaquah, I asked him, hey, have you heard about new code changes? No, I haven't. So I didn't know. I said, well, told me, you better hurry up and get your stuff in. The problem with that is, to get your stuff in, there's a wait line. The staff, I love the staff, they're doing a great job, but they're busy. They have a lot of projects before them. There's a Costco, and everything is virtual. You can't put a call. You gotta put your questions in paper and send it in. Is a processing time, 2 to 10 days. So I urge you to consider those challenges, and always ask yourself, who are we serving here? Are we serving the public? And if we are, aren't we here to provide the public the housing that they need? And I think by extending the deadline for this new land use code applied to the existing projects in the pipeline for additional 6 months, so it would be June of 23.
Sir,
You're
you've
doing the
reached
right
the
job.
end of the 5-minute.
Thank you. Thank you very
Period.
much.
All right, the next individual who signed up to speak is Ben Hobbs. Ben?
I was going to just jump in here real quickly, Tisha. I apologize to Mr. Karam. I forgot to mention that there is a 5-minute period where we're looking for comments. So again, for the benefit of those behind him, please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to address specifically sort of regulations and codes and stuff like that, and the additions thereof. But I really, I guess I would have to, talk about Hossein's problems with what's going on with his attempt at a development project. I myself have seen sort of a lot of places around in Issaquah, not just Issaquah, but our neighbor Snoqualmie, because my cousin was working, my cousin and his family were working on housing in Snoqualmie, and thanks to the sort of the regulation processes and stuff about concerning just a well, in terms of how far away it was, how deep it could be, how wide it was supposed to be. It just kind of hamstrung him and tied his hands together around the project, so that way he just had to abandon it. And I feel like that's not really a good place to go to, reach progress in terms of either Snoqualmie or here in Issaquah. But besides that, even here in Issaquah, we've had a neighbor that basically had just destroyed the whole house to sort of rebuild and stuff like that. But, the permitters came in and they said, well, you can't even finish the destruction of the house. You have to wait until compliance of code for that. And that seemed to have been an eyesore just on my street for, 4 or 5 years. Same thing I think happened with, silly enough, Taco Bell KFC over on Gilman or whatever. It was again an eyesore on everything, but thanks to sort of the regulations on that, that couldn't be built either or rebuilt. Well, it finally did, of course, but I think I understand at least that particular situation, because that place was actually, I think, located in a flood zone, and a lot of buildings might or might not be in that flood zone, but I'm pretty sure that area was. It actually took out a restaurant called Lombardi's there. I don't think they're there anymore at all. But anyways, I just wanted to sort of ask questions about the new coding, and to sort of just ask in general, is this fair on the people who are trying to build? And if you were a company and you had decided to put new codes in yourself, would you be considered to be dealing in good faith? And would other people then want to deal with you as said corporation? Because it seems to me that you don't really answer to those same kinds of, let's say, social rules or mores. You don't have to really worry about your reputation sort of going down the drain. And I just kind of wanted to make that as part of sort of a general comment, because if anything, I'm worth having construction, if only to get rid of the eyesores in various areas and stuff like that. But anyways, that's about the gist of my comment. Thank you very much.
The next person signed up to speak is Bob Hegland.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to address you today. My name is Bob Hagland. I live in Granite Falls. I was here, several days ago when you had a meeting and spoke to the adverse effects on people's livelihoods, and especially their health effects of excessive regulation. I just have a concern. It's a very general one, is that when we act in public service, that we do have a role to balance the needs of everyone. In the case of planning and in your processes, you're balancing the needs of the people and the ever-increasing population and the needs to protect the environment we all live in and we love. And that's something I just really like to encourage you to really focus more on the people for a change, a little bit more. I'm not saying that you're tilted the wrong way, but I'm just saying just maybe lean a little bit more that direction, because we do have a real problem with housing right now, where the housing is very much in short supply here throughout the Puget Sound region. Frankly, other parts of the state I've been visiting. It's a real serious issue that is going to affect a couple of things. One is it affects our children. If our children can't afford to live in the communities that they grew up in, they have to find another place to live. That breaks the community up. That's a very bad thing. The other is the effect on health. One of the things that when we have a short supply of housing, and when housing is not just readily available or affordable, there's only a fixed amount of money in most people's families. We can't, like the Federal Reserve, just print money, and we don't want people going into debt to live. So the choice comes down to this: is you have housing, energy, food, and then things like healthcare come after that. The problem is that, as we know, that the policies outside of our arena that we don't have direct control over are adversely affecting the cost of energy, and it's driving up food, and it's driving up a lot of things. But you do have the ability to control the cost of housing to some extent. You can nudge it. And what I would suggest you do, and I really encourage you to do, is nudge it in the direction of affordability by allowing these projects that are in process to be completed and get on the market. It might be just a small number, a few hundred units here, a couple hundred there, but it does make a big difference in the large scale of things when you start to see the snowball effect of that. And again, I'm not asking you to sacrifice the environment or sacrifice the quality of life for the people of Issaquah. I'd never ask for that. But I just ask you to consider a little more weight toward the human side of it and a little less weight, because we put a lot of emphasis on the environment. Be conscious, but please think more about the people. That's what I'd encourage you to do, and thank you very much.
The next speaker is Council President Walsh.
Thank you. My name is Lindsay Walsh. I serve currently on the City Council as the Council President. And we had each of us sign up to come and meet you guys as you're working your way back in person, both to thank you for bearing with us through the process, and also just to thank you for serving in a very unusual time. I know we had many years worth of virtual meetings, and it took a while to get used to it, but then you kind of got into your groove and you knew what you were doing in that way. And now we're coming back in person and doing hybrid and doing things like that. So I guess just thank you for bearing with us. Thank you for your service, for those who have been on for a while, for those who are newer and are just learning the ropes. Just as context, I started out on the Planning Policy Commission, served there for 2 years. It's a very rewarding experience. And so one of the other things I want to say is the council is really interested in making sure that you know how important your work is. I mean, I serve on the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee for council, and seeing the work as it comes through on Title 18 is really awe-inspiring. Sorry if we push a few things back toward you guys as we have more questions and things that need to come up. But I know this has been a long process. I want to thank you dearly for that. The expertise that you bring to this and the engagement with the community is really very valuable. We're looking forward to strengthening these connections, making sure that you're aware after something passes through your committee or your commission where it goes in council, and then closing the loop and making sure the information comes back to you so you know how everything ended up in the end. So just again, thank you, and thank you guys virtually up there for all of your service. Yeah, if you guys need anything, you can always email us, citycouncil@issaquahwa.gov, and we would love to hear from you. But otherwise, we will let you do your work, and we'll get on and not be able to dig down into it as deeply as you can. So thanks again.
The next speaker is Paul Hess.
My name is Paul Hess. I have known Hossein Karam for over 10 years, have the utmost respect for him. And I really want to just say 3 things this evening. I'm not going to take my full 5 minutes. I appreciate the fact that all of you on this commission take your work seriously. You have a lot of interest to balance. Life is complicated. And when you have a project like Hossein and his brother are putting together here in Issaquah, the 2 complexes they have are really quality complexes in Bellevue, and they care.
Mr. Hess, I would ask you to refrain from talking about any current projects that are in the process, please.
The 3 things I want to say is The first word is certainty, that these projects take a long time, any project of this size. And if you change the rules in the middle of the game, it really is not fair and can be very expensive for the developer. So having said that, and looking around at other governments here in King County, delay has been the watchword. Is because of COVID, they've extended the deadline. So it seems to me that creating certainty is part of your role, so that people don't have to do it all over again when new rules are submitted. So I would submit that a 6-month moratorium, maybe not a moratorium, extension to June 30th of 2023, maybe a 12-month extension for projects that are already in the pipeline is more than reasonable. The second thing that I would say is that it's important to realize the cost of these projects, just the preliminary costs that you have to put up front. And again, I think that you want to protect the public, you want to protect the environment, all these things, but you also have to look at the pocketbook of the developer, and if it's a very discouraging situation where added costs would be incurred due to, again, a change in the code that you promulgate. So again, I would ask that a reasonable extension be granted to all projects that are already pretty far along in the process. And the last thing I want to say is that all of us have learned how hard it is during COVID to recalibrate and figure out how to get things done. And there's a huge amount of arterial sclerosis that has occurred in trying to get projects done. And this is one of the reasons that housing is so high, is to duplicate that in this environment with the slow pace, using emails rather than a 2-hour meeting to get things done. I hope you take that into consideration and recognize that we have had a very unusual environment with COVID, and to honor those that have worked through that process, sometimes with great frustration, but also success. It's just a very slow-moving process. So I would hope you would give time, extra time, to those who have already moved their projects fairly far along, and not subject them to a new code. Thank you.
We have 2 more speakers here in the room. Just a reminder to any of the virtual attendees, if you're wanting to make comments under this general public comment period, please raise your virtual hand or send me, the host, a chat message. The next person signed up is Dale Funk.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. I want to echo to some degree the comments of Mr. Hess, but also to reiterate and reflect a little bit the comments of the council president when she commented on how much of a transition it was to go from normal in-person live meetings to abruptly terminating those, going to Zoom meetings, and now starting a transition back to meetings that are partly in person, partly on Zoom. All of those transitions took time for people to get used to the new way of doing things, and now we're shifting a little bit to getting used to doing them and then back to what we used to be used to. And all of those time-eating delays put every project that was coming through your planning and building departments, it stepped them back. And I think one of the things that you and every council struggle with is the issue of fair equity. What is fair to the applicant? What is fair to the residents of the city and every other party who has, every stakeholder involved? And it's not an easy balancing act, but I don't think it's a stretch to recognize, as your council president did, that there have been delays, and to step back for a little bit and kind of try to take a guesstimate, if you will, at, well, how much of a delay has the project, not just this project, but any of your projects been, moved back in time, and to say, well, maybe it's not unreasonable to use your discretionary authority to add a little padding on. I know that enormous weight is given to the concept of vesting, and with good reason. But when applicants come in and try to work their way through a process that's been fairly abruptly changed, in which nobody on either side of any of the parties really knew what all the new rules and processes would be. And I don't mean the building codes, I mean the processes for how do we submit questions, how do we get answers, how do we resolve issues that are, because there are always ambiguities on plans. The best experts in the world will sit down and look at the code and try to design something that complies with it. Somebody else is going to look at it and say, well, there's a better way to do it or a different way to do it. So it's never possible to just read the code and say, okay, we're going to do this and it's going to comply. There are always questions, and when you run into these lengthy delays at getting answers and resolutions to those questions, and there have been, it's not unreasonable to say, well, maybe vesting isn't the absolute cast in concrete gold standard. Maybe we do need to take a breath, use a little discretion, and say, maybe we can stretch this out a little bit. Let's give these projects that have been in the pipeline for a year, 2 years, or thereabouts, recognize that these delays have not been caused by the applicant, not been caused by the city, not been caused by any of the stakeholders. But in fairness and equity and justice, stretch that out a little bit, give them a little room to breathe. The day will come when we'll be back to, normal in-person meetings, getting answers resolved more quickly, and so on, but we're not there yet. So as we work our way towards that, I don't think it's unreasonable for you and the council to use your discretion, treat these people with some fairness and equity. It's good for everybody. Thank you.
The next speaker is Landon Halverson.
Hello, everybody. My name is Landon Halverson. I'm a resident of downtown Issaquah. I live just about 500 feet that way. And I just wanted to stop by briefly to discuss what many others have discussed tonight, and that's the new land code and potentially extending that by 6 months for the implementation. I think you guys already understand why we're asking for that. I think in your roles, you guys understand why it is difficult for a project to flip on a dime like that. I think you guys understand that. So really what this is about is sending a very clear message. Do you send a very clear message to developers and to people who want to come in and build up our communities that you can do so, and that the regulatory process that you have to go through is going to be stable? Or do we send the message that, well, you're going to have to go through a regulatory process and it might take many years, and by the time you get through it, you may actually have to go back to the drawing board because by the time you have the opportunity to finish, there's going to be a new set of requirements that you have to meet, and it kind of becomes this ongoing cycle where I, as a resident, look at it and say, well, whoever's making the rules must just not want people to build, because it ends up being a rule that, while it does not explicitly stop people from building in Issaquah, it makes it nearly impossible to do so in a timely, efficient manner, to the point where no reasonable person would want to come into our communities and develop. So as a resident, it is just really important to me that we have regulatory stability for the businesses and for the developers that come in. Those standards should be robust. Those standards should protect our natural environment. Those standards should uphold the things that we value. But at the same time, those standards, if you're going to have projects that take as long as some of these projects have, those standards have to be applied consistently all the way through. It is not reasonable to look at a multi-million-dollar project and say, oh, well, we know it's been this long, but back to the drawing board. It just doesn't make sense. And ultimately, when you do that, that causes the production cost to go up, and the final sales cost of those units on a monthly basis is going to be higher. Right? So every step back that we take with regulatory reform ultimately is going to cost renters and tenants more on the front end, or on the back end rather. So I would encourage you to think about these things and to think about ways that you and your commission can help to ensure regulatory stability for developers that come in. The city has spent ample time designing these. And again, I trust you guys to make the right decision on those kinds of things. That's why you're here. But as a resident, I just want to put in my input that I really hope you take the time to consider the importance of regulatory stability and extend this by at least 6 months. Thanks.
The next speaker is a virtual attendee, Andy. Andy, I'm going to make you a panelist now. You should then see the option to unmute and can choose to turn your video on.
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, lovely. So I'm just calling in. I'll keep my comments short. I grew up in Sammamish, just nearby, and lived there mostly recently until going to Burien. I'm a very passionate horticulturalist. I love nature, and so I really do care about our native species and such. That being said, I'm also a millennial, and housing is the thing most on people's mind. I'm fortunately able to get one somewhat recently, but I'm commenting because I know this area very well. I am out in the woods super often, and I'm very aware of the wildlife concerns. But I'm just also in favor of more housing and making this process easier. This is a top concern of people my age, and I wanted to put my comments for that I really wish that we can be pro-development in this kind of way. That is my comment there. Thank you.
Chair Voice, no one else has signed up to speak. We do have a few additional folks in the room here. And I guess I'll ask, Chair, would you like me to see if there's anyone else in the room who'd like to make comments?
Sure. If they're just arriving, I would just mention to them that, again, these are general public comments for the Policy Commission. So if they could please keep it to that, that would be great.
Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to make general comments? Sir, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Frank Koram. I'm Hussein's partner in construction and business for the past 43 years. We have lived here in Western Washington, and we have seen how Washington State have grown from a sleepy East Side community to a bustling, great economy with great employment and great housing increases. And with that, we have seen great costs that people pay to either purchase or rent housing for themselves and their family. And in the past 43 years, we have never seen inflation like we have seen in the last few months. We have never seen COVID, pandemics, and for that reason, among other reasons, I would definitely recommend for the city to consider extending the basically the process with the new codes on projects that are in the pipeline. And especially for our project that's been 3 years in the making at this stage at a great cost, changing the rules, it's unfair, and I believe it would serve the end user, which is in this case going to be renters, going to cost them more money the more regulation we have. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to make general comments? Sir, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Commissioner, staff. My name is Ali Kimiai. I'm a small developer. Currently, I have 2 small projects, multifamily projects in Renton. And if whatever happened to Mr. Khorram, if it happens to me, I'm done. I mean, just the thought of going through the whole thing again, it's very time-consuming and expensive. So I agree with the 6 months extension, if that's possible. Thank you.
Chair Voice, I don't see anyone else in the room indicating a desire to speak at this time.
Thank you. And let me just say very quickly, I want to say my appreciation to everyone who just provided comments. I know some had come armed with some specifics, and you did a very good job at trying to keep them as general as possible. We deeply appreciate it. And I also want to say very much thank you to Council President Walsh and her very nice comments. So again, thank you all for participating. It's an important part of our process, and we hope you stick around for the rest of the meeting. So moving on. Now we're going to actually do the public hearing for this evening. The title's 18 Zoning and Development Standard Code Updates. Tonight, staff will present all 4 topics. After each topic, commissioners will ask clarifying questions. Once all topics have been presented and all questions asked, we will open the hearing up for public comment related to this issue. After that, the Development Commission will take over for deliberations this evening. At that point, I will pass off control of the meeting to Vice Chair Brookie Shore, who will facilitate her commission's deliberative portion tonight. And I'll also ask Planning Policy, who's gotten pretty good at this, to turn off their cameras when we get there. We will be actually deliberating this in person, Planning Policy, in person on the dais for the first time in over 2 years, this July 28th, this coming Thursday. So looking forward to seeing all of you guys in chambers. So tonight, I'm going to ask staff to please go ahead with your presentation. Again, we'll have a presentation, ask clarifying questions, move on to the next presentation, so on, and then we'll go for, sorry, there's a little thing going in the chat box. Then we will go for public hearing comments and then finally deliberations. So staff, please take it away.
I'm Kristen Leeson. I'm senior planner. And I believe that the presentation is going to be posted for me. So I'm going to hang on just a minute. Tisha and Valerie, do you all need me to present on this end?
Yes, please present.
Okay. All right, are we good to go? You all see it?
Kristen, you're on.
I
TDR's
know, I
major changes.
can't. I'm trying. Let's see.
But yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. Yeah, it won't let my buttons aren't working tonight. I'm not on my usual computer. Okay, thank you for your patience. So tonight we are talking about bucket 5, which is zoning and development standards. Included in that are transfer of development rights and affordable housing, to which I will speak, and then landmarks and archaeological resources, and then parking. There we go. So first, transfer of development rights. Come on. So what are they? Transfer development rights, also known more affectionately as TDRs because it's easier to say. So what these do, what the program does, is it allows increased development on one parcel, which is the receiving site, while protecting another parcel, the sending site, from future development. And this is all at the owner's discretion. So the city never went in and said, particularly with sending sites, you're a sending site. And if people want to, they can, buy development rights from your property. People have opted into this program. Right now, the way we started this program is that sending sites are typically sites with 50% or more of the land that is encumbered by critical areas. Development rights can be bought and sold between public agencies, between private entities, or between public and private entities. TDRs can be banked to preserve. So we were given a property as a sending site, and only one development right from that property was purchased and used. And so we have the remaining property sitting in a bank right now. So that's what that means. And then these can be used for 4 things. On the receiving site, they can be used to increase impervious surface, to increase height, to increase floor area ratio, or to increase density. So where are these sites, you ask? The sites that are in red are our receiving sites. So all of those properties can increase the density on those properties through TDRs. The green sites are sending sites, and these are within the city. We also have an interlocal agreement with the county for sending sites out there as well. Major changes that took place. As I mentioned, right now, our sending sites are for properties that primarily are 50% or more encumbered by critical areas. And what we've done, one of our goals was the protection of hillsides. And so what we've done is incorporate hillsides here. And it's parcels where 50% of the site is a hillside, with 20% to 39% of the property as a slope. And then we've moved density calculations that are used to determine how much can actually be transferred and used on the receiving site. That calculation was going to be pulled. We moved it into the section. We are looking at changing levels of review for additions and removals of sending and receiving sites, because right now the sending sites are level 1 and the receiving sites are level 3, but that's really a policy decision, and both are code changes. So they need to go higher up to the city council. And lastly, we have codified bank activities. There was a bank that was mentioned and it was floating out there. Not quite sure what the authority was, though, so we have included regulations regarding that. There is one spot that it says it's a placeholder, and we're not quite sure about determining who will determine the cost of the sending site. So we're trying to figure that out right now with our city attorneys. That's all I have for TDRs. Let me know if you have questions.
So Tisha, because this is our first hybrid meeting, would you like to facilitate as far as calling on people? Would that make it easier for everyone?
I'm happy to help with that. I'm looking in the room here and not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, I don't see any in the chat either, but I just figured get this out of the way since we're going to have some time to do some clarifying questions for each presentation.
Actually, Commissioner Milligan has a question.
Ah, it just popped up. Commissioner Milligan.
Thank you, Chair Voice. Planning Policy Commissioner Milligan, Nina Milligan here. Thank you. My question was just about In this round of changes, are there going to be any changes in the sending or receiving sites as defined?
No, or not.
Okay, thank you.
Are any other questions? Should I move on? Okay.
Too slow to actually put it in the chat, but I guess I have a couple real quickly, Kristen. On page 3 of 17, I believe, of the code, it says under C2, the parcel is within a quarter mile of a transit stop. Would this just be classified as a normal bus stop?
I am going to say that that needs to be clarified.
Okay. And then on the other page, yeah, because again, I don't know if it's a transit facility or just simply a stop. On the other page, 5A, the TDRs must be in addition to and not as a substitute for the development rights as specified in the development agreement. Can you shed a little light on that statement?
Would you please read it again?
The TDRs must be in addition to and not as a substitute for the development rights as specified in the development agreement.
So as I understand it, a development agreement is essentially a land use code for a developer who, so the Issaquah Highlands and Tallis, that was their own land use code. So this would work in that sense, and that is their land use code, and then they would add on, they can add density to what is written in their development agreement on top of that with TDRs.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was it for me.
Okay.
One more if I'm not jumping out of turn. Page 7 of 17, it says placeholder. The fair market value of the development rights shall be established by placeholder. Anyone in mind?
Well, that's the one I mentioned with, that we're working with the city attorney right now on that language to figure out who that will be.
Done.
Okay. All right. All right, moving on. Affordable housing. Is it still there?
Hi, Kristen. A quick clarification on the TDR. The interlocal agreement with King County, it's our understanding that is no longer in effect. It expired in 2014. So just wanted to note for that for the record. So that is our understanding after talking with King County, but we'll look further into it.
And
I'm still sharing.
No, Kristen,
went
I'm
away off the
sorry.
screen.
We had a little mix up in here. I'm giving that role back to you, so you should be able to share again. Sorry about that.
Okay. It's a little confused. Okay. It's new to all of us right now. Let's see. Every time. All right, there we go. Affordable housing. So what is affordable housing? So we have, out there is market rate affordable housing, which is housing that is affordable just because it is affordable. It is not because there are any covenants tied to it or the city requires it. It is just happens to be more affordable. When we talk about affordable housing in this chapter, we're talking about housing that has covenants attached to it, stating that it will remain affordable for a determined amount of time. The income levels for this range from below, typically at about 30% of the King County median income, up to 80% of the King County area median income. That is what counts toward our affordable housing numbers. However, in Issaquah, we also will tie covenants to housing that is at 81% to 120% because we've recognized that the cost of housing here is so high that we need covenants to make it affordable to even a larger group of people. So just to show you the location of some of our housing, we have about 800 units up to 80% AMI. And so anywhere from 30 to 80%, and this is where they are all located. These all have covenants attached to them. And these are our affordable housing units. We have about 200 that are above 80% of the area median income. Our major changes, I think the biggest one that we made is that we updated our code to match other ARCH member cities code. So it's a regional coalition for housing. And we consider them to be, that's ARCH. We consider them to be our affordable housing and even our housing planners. And they work with 14 different jurisdictions. And they try and keep consistency among the jurisdictions, one for fairness and one to make it easier to enforce. So what we have done is updated our codes to be consistent with other ARCH jurisdictions. We also changed a 30-year rental affordability, not ownership, rental affordability requirement to the life of the project, because the 30% met the bank requirements. That's what they had to do, but it didn't really meet the requirements or the needs of the city and its residents. We codified the quality of affordable units. So ARCH has always said, well, if you're going to do market rate and you're going to have affordable units mixed in, they have to be compatible with that. But it was a little hard to enforce because it wasn't codified, both the interior and the exterior. So we made that change. We removed, right now, we allow as a flexible standard a reduction of recreation space. And we thought, why? That makes no sense. Everybody needs recreation space. So it just didn't make sense. And then lastly, we have amended requirements for off-site alternative compliance, and we added payment in lieu. It used to be that if you were going to build affordable units off-site, it still had to be in the same sub-area. But if you're trying to avoid a really large concentration of affordable units, or if there's no place to develop, you may not get those units or the original project at all. And similar to fee in lieu, at least if you get a fee in lieu or a payment in lieu, you may not get the projects, but you still get money that can then go toward affordable housing projects. So we've added that as a regulation as well. And those are my, that's what I have. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
So we have a couple questions that I see. Again, I think Tisha and I are going to try and share this responsibility, but I do see that Commissioner Bader has a question. So please, Commissioner Bader.
Yeah, hi, this is Sarah Bader. Just a quick clarifying question on the inclusionary requirements in the code. Was there any expansion in the area to which those apply from the previous code to what's proposed now?
There was not, but we just received the Housing Action Plan Implementation Grant, which we are kicking off at the beginning of August. And one of the tasks with that is to look at expanding the area for inclusionary zoning.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Bader. Commissioner Milligan with a question.
Thank you. Nina Milligan here. I actually have two questions. Should I just rattle them off? They're fairly simple. Okay. One of them is for the affordable housing. I think, if I'm understanding what you said, Kristen, that for the fee in lieu, there was this concern about having, affordable housing all in one place. But isn't our affordable housing requirement a percentage of a project in general? And then the second question I want to ask is why are we extending the term for a rental but not for home ownership to the life of the project? Those are my two.
So I should be a little clearer on the fee in lieu. We have fee in lieu for, I just blanked, our development bonus, or right now, density bonus program. And then this fee in lieu falls under the alternative compliance. And so it's a way, alternative compliance, prior to this, we didn't allow fee in lieu. It just said you have to build housing somewhere else. So this gave them an option as to if you can't build housing somewhere else. Let's at least get the money for that so that that can go toward affordable housing. And so those two are not really tied to the area. It also, the alternative compliance without the fee in lieu says you have to build in the same sub area. So we have changed that piece to say you don't have to build in the sub area. We just want the housing. So build it where you can get it. And if you can't do that, then give us money and we'll contribute to affordable housing. Did that help clear it up at all?
Yeah, and then I'm sorry, that begs a follow-up question. What would be a circumstance where a developer could not build the affordable units required? How would that happen?
If they were going to be off-site, they may not be able to find land.
No, what if but in the original, in the on-site development requirement, why wouldn't they be able to?
I have asked this question myself. This is new to us. There are situations where they can't. I think it's there as a safety net. Okay. This is one of those things where we're trying to be consistent with other cities who use this. And it's just sort of been used as a safety net. It hasn't been used often, the alternative compliance, but just in case. Yeah.
I'll save deliberations because I know I'm not deliberating. My other question had to do with why is it different between home ownership and rental?
Again, that's consistency with other jurisdictions. Yeah.
Thank you. And we have a question from the dais. So Commissioner Morgan, please.
Thank you, Chair Voice. Changing the requirement from 30 years to indefinite, is that something that was discussed with developers and with bankers to find out their feeling of what the impact would be, and if anybody would be willing to finance affordable units?
So no, it hasn't been discussed, but it's done in several other cities, and they haven't had any issues with it so far. I suppose we could reach out and see, but the other cities haven't had any issues with the same requirement.
Okay, well, and I think it'd be helpful, it seems like, to talk to developers and bankers themselves. The comment was made that is a requirement of the banks, not the needs of the community. And I guess finding out what the basis is, because if banks won't finance something, it won't get built typically. So, and I'll probably have a comment about that when we get to the comment period. So thank you.
Chair Voice, there's another question in the room.
Hi, thank you. This is Kevin Price speaking. I had a question about the AMI figure. The upper limit was set at 120%. Is that existing or proposed? I don't see it in the existing language of the code.
It is existing.
Oh, okay.
We already have, yeah, it's existing. It's not, but as I mentioned, so what counts toward our affordable units, when we talk to the county and we say, this is how many affordable units we have, they go from 0 to 80%. And I just mentioned, because I know that there are about 200 units all in the highlands of units that go from 81 to 120%. Those also have covenants attached. They're just not really included in this chapter, so I thought I would mention them.
I see. And is that 120% rental and ownership? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's mostly ownership.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't see any more virtual questions, but that doesn't mean there aren't questions.
No more questions in the room.
Okay, give it a second. All right, I believe we can move on.
Hello, my name is Valerie Porter, and I'm going to talk about landmarks preservation. So what is landmarks and archaeological resources? It encourages the protection and the preservation and enhancement of resources that are associated with important and past events and themes and peoples. So this section is going to talk about the Landmarks Commission, the nomination process, the designation criteria, and the designation process. So in 2001, the city entered into an interlocal agreement with King County to provide Issaquah assistance with historical preservation. This group consists of about 9 members, and so they review all of the landmark nominations as well as designating any landmarks for us. So right about now, we have about 6 landmarks within the city. There's the Auto Freight Building, there's the Issaquah Trail Depot, and the newest one is the Coots Garage Building, which is right here along Sunset Way. So some of the major changes that have occurred in this section is, one, we've added a fee recovery section. This is to allow the city to recoup any costs should we have to pay any fees on behalf of the applicant. Another one is we've adopted by reference, so we're no longer going to be essentially adding King County's code into our code. Instead, we're going to adopt by reference. I did a little research, and a lot of cities actually do this. It makes it a lot simpler and allows our code to remain consistent with King County. Another change is that we've added a Landmarks Commission section. This is basically codifying the Landmarks Commission's authority to make decisions on our behalf. And then it's also codifying the special member position, which is the city's representative that reviews projects when any nominations are made. In this section, we also tried to align our code with our interlocal agreement. So we added language basically stating that should an applicant come in wanting to make a revision to a landmark, that the city would take into consideration the county's historic preservation officer's comments. Just make sure that the city and the county are aligned. And then we also tried to just make sure that our references are up to date. So recently the city adopted a new code enforcement section. So we've updated that reference. So now that if there's a violation, the code enforcement officer can properly address that. And those are all of the changes. Right now, I'll take questions.
Any questions on landmarks?
Chair Voice, we have one question here in the room from Commissioner Dillon.
Please.
Thank you. Patty Dillon speaking. So the adoption of the King County Code by reference, presumably, or I guess, does that refer to a specific code? So if King County changes their code to a subsequent edition that might have changes the city would not want to adopt, that we would have flexibility to act differently?
So yes, we would be referencing King County specific code that talks about landmarks. So yes, if they make a change, then we need to be aware of it, because then we would be required to apply to it. So it's something that we're going to have to be aware of. And usually I think when the city or the county makes changes to their code, they let everyone know, because a lot of cities are, again, adopting to reference.
Great, thank you.
Chair, there are no other questions here in the room.
Thank you, and I'm not seeing any in my chat box, but I do have one, and it's under Article 2, General Administration and Standards, Point A. The property owner or applicant is required to pay any fees exceeding $750 for services conducted on behalf of a property owner or applicant by King County. My question to you is, if it's under $750, who picks up that tab?
If it's under $750, the city would cover it.
Thank you. That's all I have. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. Landmarks. Thank you, Valerie.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Thomas Valdrez, and I'm the Senior Transportation Planner at the City of Issaquah. Great to meet you all today, and surely working with you a lot in the coming years. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, go back. Thank you, Valerie. So moving on to parking today, as planners and staff, we see this as an excellent opportunity to realign our parking code just to better support the city's adopted vision, goals, and policies. As defined by the Title 18 Council Ad Hoc Committee, there are 4 high-level goals that I'd like to first chat with you about to sort of ground us in what we're doing here today. So the first goal today is to modernize the code and incorporate best practices by creating a well-organized and clear code that improves public access to information, provides tools to address community needs, and helps create the kinds of places that the community expects. The second goal today is to provide adequate parking while utilizing land efficiently by minimizing the amount of land impacted and related to parking, recognizing the varied amenities, services, and needs throughout the city, and ensuring that reasonably adequate parking provisions are provided to those who are reliant on personal vehicles, while also planning on the future conversion of garages and parking spaces in surface parking lots. The third goal is to create housing diversity, and that was sort of touched on previously. The way to do so would be to provide or retain housing at a cost rarely found in the city, encouraging small housing types for improved affordability, as well as increasing affordability and ownership. Lastly, the fourth goal that we'll be sort of tying in our conversation today relates to the effective management of travel resulting from new development in line with non-motorized transit and climate goals by establishing electric vehicle ready code, which is essentially the requirement of providing power facilities for the future installation of electric vehicle charging stations. Next slide, please. Now, so given the the goals and objectives that we had just referred to, staff went ahead and conducted a gaps analysis. We flagged where there was contradictions in the existing code, where different code language was confusing or inconsistent, and to make sure that the adopted policies and objectives would be reflected in the code. So staff brought this topic to PPC and DC, the affinity groups, and discussed the proposed changes with the city attorney's office. And to reiterate what was mentioned at a previous PPC meeting in February, the intent of this update is simply to preserve all regulations as much as possible. More substantial changes will be identified on a whiteboard. There's been a couple of topics that have been brought up, so those are all on the whiteboard and will be addressed later at a future update. So that being said, there's 8 major changes that are being proposed today, and I would like to share those with you. So the first 3, which are on our slide here, we can see that they're really related to modernizing the code and incorporating best practices. So the first one we see is consolidation and removing redundant codes just to simplify and make sure that things are enforceable. Number 2, we have the adoption and creation of the intent sections, and this is just to provide a more consistent application of how regulations are carried through. The third change we have is a wholesale replacement of shoulds and musts. This was eliminated to reduce the vagueness and make sure that, again, the code is enforceable. Next slide, please. Continuing on with change 4, this includes updating the portion of the off-street parking requirement This is with parking generation estimates using the latest version of the Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Manual, kind of a mouthful, ITE Parking Generation Manual, 5th edition. This change is being proposed to, as a result of discussions from the Development Commission and PPC's desire to make sure that regulations are more consistent and predictable. So these metrics are really, a nationally recognized gold standard, and it'll allow us to have a more consistent way of, providing adequate parking, but also being more efficient with the land. Change 5 includes the consolidation of parking requirements into 2 tiers. These tiers are based on land use context and neighborhood characteristics. And these recognize that there are differences between neighborhoods. Some neighborhoods support denser growth and others don't. So being specific here, tier 1 represents neighborhoods that accommodate multimodal goals, and it's applicable to central Issaquah, the Issaquah Highlands within the commercial areas, as well as Old Town neighborhood. Tier 2 just represents everything else, so all other parts of the city which are less dense. Next slide, please. And just finishing up here with this third round of changes that we're proposing. Change 6, this represents existing parking requirements, and it's an update of bike parking per the direction of the commission. So with this change, we're really trying to support the multimodal system goals of the mobility master plan. This section was expanded upon per the direction of the PBC, and provides more details on what's required and where we're encouraging bicycle amenities in the more urban parts of the city. Change 7 represents shared parking provisions, and it incorporates modern best practices with flexible parking tools that better recognize the market demands and how the market influences how parking is provided, and the ways that the geographic location of a project might impact the parking needs of a project. And finally, with change 8, we're proposing an update to the existing electric vehicle parking regulations. Doing so would better support Issaquah's climate action plan, and also support the federal electric vehicle regulations that are currently being imposed. So, these changes really, they're just adjustments to EV ready, which is, parking stations within a building that have, conduit and sort of electrical capabilities in order to support electric vehicles. And then it's also an adjustment, just a very minor adjustment to the existing EVSE or EV charging station requirements, and this would be applicable to new development and some existing buildings. Next slide, please. So now that we've sort of shared what staff is proposing, I'd like to ask the commission for some feedback. These were the questions that were presented in the memo that was provided for this meeting. But however, before I begin with asking these questions, I did want to acknowledge that there were a couple typos that were presented in the memo, and I just wanted to make you all aware of that. We do apologize for these typos. They represent very minor omissions and typos, but I did want to address those and just flag those for you. So those are on pages 64, 87, 88, 92, 99, 103, and 120. I can certainly dive into these, but they really don't provide much difference in what you see here. They're just, some of them are carryovers from the old code that there were just minor typos, missing some letters. It's very minor things. So I'd be more than happy to chat about those, but just wanted to make you all aware of that going into this. So the first question that I had for the commission was, does this draft code support PPC's direction to clarify short-term and long-term bike parking regulations?
So, Mr. Valdries?
Yes.
If you don't mind, we're going to keep those discussion questions for the deliberative portion of tonight's meeting. So again, that'll be for Development Commission to try and give you some answers. But right now, we really just want clarifying questions on your presentation or the packet itself.
Great. Yep. Thank you, Chair.
Didn't mean to step on you, but is your presentation through? Are we now at the point where we want to start asking questions?
Absolutely. Yep.
Perfect.
Thank you, Chair.
Right on time.
Chair Voice, we have a question from Commissioner Morgan.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Chair Boyce. The location requirements, so page 85 of 121, the location requirements for bike storage rooms. If you have bike storage facilities within a parking garage, within a building that's not attended by a security guard, not visible from employee work areas, and not visible from residential communal areas, that would not be allowed? Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Commissioner. Yeah, so the intent is really to, make sure that the language that we're providing for long-term parking results in a bike parking situation where the location is highly visible, and cities in the area have found that having long-term bike parking that is highly visible under those scenarios that you had just mentioned results in a reduction in bike thefts.
But essentially, any bike storage within a parking garage would not be allowed then? So if, for example, our fund owns an office building in Seattle that has 3 floors of underground parking, and 2 of the floors have bike storage. And it's a large tech tenant that occupies the building. And it's worked really well from them, but that building, the way I understand it, they wouldn't be able to do that. They would have to find space within the regular office portion, like the lobby or something like that. And so it sounds like that's what's intended then?
Correct, yeah. So as we have it currently, that would not be an allowed use.
Okay, thank you. I do have another question. I think on page 88 was one of the typos with the 4,000 square feet of office was 40,000. But also, it is intended that the minimum bike parking for residential would be 1 bike stall per unit. So if you have a 200-unit apartment building, it would be 200 bike stalls?
That would be correct, yes.
And is that typical in, I guess my question, it seems like a lot. Is that a typical standard now for bike storage?
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner. We have found in area cities that is becoming a standard practice as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan.
Sorry, one other question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
On page 113 of 121, if I'm trying to figure this out, we have a requirement that 10% of all the required stalls have to be EVSE stalls, and then you can get a reduction of your total stalls up to 10% on a 1-for-1 basis if EVSE stalls are put in. So it seems to me EVSE stalls have to be put in, at least 10%. So won't that just automatically mean you'll get a 10% reduction in your total required stalls?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And not that I'm against that, but it seems like I have to put 10% in, and I'll end up getting credit for that 10% in the total.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner. Yeah, we will go back to the drawing board on that one.
Okay. Not that you have to change it, just it sort of seems like it becomes a requirement. And then I did have a question about the overlapping business hours for shared parking. It sounds like that's determined, business hours are determined by the developer of the property?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And if they said, well, I guess is there a provision there for the director to have an approval of that? If somebody said our business hours are 10 to 2 or something that didn't seem reasonable?
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner. I think how it's typically done in area cities is, as we're proposing, I'm not aware of issues that have come up through that. We do like to provide, some flexibility for, the cases that come in, not to be like too prescriptive for all the situations that might apply, but, it's pretty common to sort of understand, like, as a business functions, like what the ebbs and flows and like the duration of a business might entail. But you do raise a good point in terms of like the reasonableness of when a statement is made.
Yeah,
So.
perhaps a phrase about as approved by the director might help. Okay, thank you. I think that's all my questions. Thank you, Chair Voice.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. That was fantastic. Commissioner Milligan has a question or questions.
Questions. Two. Commissioner Nina Milligan here. Thank you. I love going after Commissioner Morgan. He always covers good ground. My two questions have to do with, one of them is kind of a general question. So Thomas, I'm going to ask that one first. And that is, as we've seen increased residential density in an area like in central Issaquah, where there used to be, just retail or just commercial, and the impacts that has on on-street parking, just generally speaking, how has that influenced how we're looking at these parking regulations going forward?
Yeah, so in a more dense area, it's sort of a balancing act between providing enough parking within a more dense area and also acknowledging that there's more transit access, there's a desire for more walkability, so you'd want
Let me rephrase.
Yeah.
I know where you're going. That's good. That's another way. That's good too. But really what I was thinking about was the impact on the businesses, where off-street parking used to accommodate business uses, and now they are day-long parking for people in dense housing projects. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, for that clarification. So we do have a provision. In the code, we allow for a 35% reduction for instance, for the street level retail. That sort of touches on your question a little bit. So we do have reductions within like the central business district area. So it does provide reductions in the requirement for like, for a 35% reduction of what the business would be required to put in.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'll save my deliberations for later. Thank you for that. Second question has to do with EV facilities, and that there is a difference between what the Planning Policy Commission worked so hard on just a few months ago, and these requirements, which are different and higher. But I don't believe that the documents that you provided us showed the delta between the planning policy. Why was that? And could that be in this sort of meeting format? Could the packet for the Planning Policy Commission include that? Show the difference?
I'm going to have to phone a friend. I'm not aware of, I was actually not employed in February, so at the city of Issaquah, so I'm not aware of what those changes were. I do, what is in the packet, what I've shown you today, shows the differences between the existing Title 18 code and what we're proposing today. And I can tell you that those changes are, fairly minor. For the EVSE, just like a 5% increase. For the, I believe it's the non-residential, and then a couple bump ups for the EV requirements, but not for the EVSE.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair Voice.
And thank you, Commissioner Milligan. Commissioner Shore has a question from the dais.
I was wondering if are there any examples of the shared parking right now that you could give us? Where is this happening?
I don't have specific examples, but I know they exist. I'm just drawing a blank here. It is a very common practice in the region to do this. And I believe the city of Kirkland is doing this currently. Yeah, I unfortunately am drawing a blank, but I do know that it is a very common practice, and it's a way to just ensure that the city is, aware of, there's existing agreements in place already between businesses, but for the city to become a party to those conversations, we can better monitor the situation. And, if there becomes a parking hotspot as a result of the agreement being broken for some reason, the city has some levers so that, the parking situation can be rectified.
Thomas, I can jump in to help answer the question. So Vice Chair Shore, in the city of Issaquah, we currently don't have any examples for shared parking agreements. We do have multiple examples from our regional partners that we can leverage and copy off of that utilizes a lot of the new language that we're proposing in the new draft.
Thanks.
Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you. If you don't mind, if I can jump in to give you an example of I'm not sure how the agreement was done, but we do have a shared parking situation. So our fund owns the Maple Street office building that originally had parking stalls on the south side of Maple Street and the buildings on the north side. Our partner wanted to build a hotel there. We didn't want to, but we sold them the parking lot with a cross-parking easement and with the approval that during the day we're able to park the same number of parking stalls that we had during the day for office tenants in their garage. And during the evening, hotel guests can park in our property. So we actually ended up with something where we took what was impervious surface, created a hotel, and caused no other impervious surface to be created. And the shared parking agreement has worked great between the two properties. So it is a good example. And the total, I was checking the number of stalls that we shared there that we had were about 37% of our overall stalls. So it met that, I think, 40% requirement that they're inputting here. That was going to be one of my comments, so thank you.
Anyone else with questions as far as parking?
There are no other questions in the room.
And I don't see any other virtually. So I just have two very quick ones. I think everyone did a pretty good job as far as the parking. I'm going to save my pontificating about the charging cars for next time. Real quickly on the bicycles. So there's two things, again, kind of superficial. It mentions bicycle parking spaces must provide parking for cyclists of all ages and abilities. What does that look like? Aren't they all the same rack?
Yeah, great question, Chair Boyce. That statement is a industry term to sort of introduce the idea of like equity for cycling. So making sure that, you know, in many words, just making sure that everybody feels like this rack is for them.
Okay, so there's not actually wider spaces for tricycles and bicycles and those unicycles and all that type of stuff.
Yep. Yeah, great question. Yeah, it's same rack, same, you know, long-term parking situation. It's really just a term of art that, you know, sort of encapsulates the equity idea that we're looking to throw out in the world.
Okay. It gets thrown into our code, so it's always, I guess, worth asking. And then there's two other things real quickly. Again, bicycles. I think everyone answered the question as far as parking. One of them, I think it's short-term bicycle parking. D, when 10 or more short-term bicycle parking spaces are required, a minimum of 50% of the spaces must be covered. What does that look like? What's a covered rack look like?
Yep, great question. So, you know, as an example, if you're looking to install bike racks in front of your business, you know, one scenario is that you put it in front of your, you know, your entryway, right? So I think one of the requirements was, you know, some distance away from the entrance, just a very short distance so that there's good visibility on the bicycle. And so in this situation, you know, say you have a rack of 10, we would ask that 5 of them are under the eave of the building, or 5 of them have some sort of, you know, weather protection. So it's about weather protection to create a comfortable biking situation so that your bicycle is dry. But it's also about, you know, making sure that it's near where people are so that there's good visibility for your bicycle.
I just wonder how that's going to look in practice. And then finally, one other one, showers for bicycles. Is this for terrain bikes near the trails?
Yeah, great question. I think maybe some clarification might be better suited for the code. The showers is for the rider themselves. So I believe this was in the tier 1, the tier 1. So in like a more dense urban area, the shower would be, you know, if you are bike commuting, say, having facilities so that, you know, when you are at work, you're not sweaty, so you can have a facility to make biking a actual sustainable way of getting to work, for example.
Interesting. Yeah. Thought I'd ask that question. That's all I have. Anyone else? Parking. Well, thank you, Mr. Valdez. Great presentation.
Yep, thank you, Chair.
So I believe that's it for our presentations. Staff can flag me if I'm wrong or going out of turn, but I believe now we're going to be moving on to the actual public hearing, public comment portion of tonight's meeting. So we're going to go ahead. It is currently 8:06. We will open up the public hearing at 8:06. Again, this is to reiterate something that I just want everyone to know, that we do read all of the emails that are sent to us. And there were a couple that at least I inferred, so if I got this wrong, I apologize, but that they might want to discuss a current project or an upcoming project in review. So again, I want everyone to understand that tonight's meeting is a public hearing for the Title 18 project not a meeting that would just have to do with the Development Commission. So again, the Development Commission is the commission that handles quasi-judicial matters. And even though this is a joint meeting, it is being led by the planning policy. And as our name suggests, this is about policy. So I would ask anyone who is going to be speaking tonight, as far as for the public hearing, to please refrain from discussing particular projects or particular concerns about certain projects, because that would be inappropriate. Tonight, we are looking for commentary on the Title 18 update, draft codes, and policies that are before us. But again, nothing else. That's really what we're here to do. The Development Commission alone has the authority and is the board that is set up to act as a court for review. So again, the PPC is not set up for that. So we ask that everyone be respectful and realize what this meeting is and what this meeting is not. So again, we are just looking for commentary about the Title 18 updates, and we ask that everyone be respectful of the time. Same timing rules apply, and I'm going to kick it over to staff to let us know if we have any speakers.
Yes, we have one speaker in the room and one virtual who've indicated a desire to speak. The first in the room, Hussein Karam.
Good evening, Chairman Boyce. Thanks for having me again. Commissioners, thank you. I wanted to talk about affordable housing. We've been in the rental business for 25 years. I think as the industry experts, we can offer some advice, some thoughts to think about. It's definitely up to the commission and the staff to consider that. I do see a great strain in the American people's income. I cannot emphasize how important it is to have affordable housing. But one of the things we've been always missing in affordable housing is the diversity in affordable housing. The way ARCH classifies affordable housing is by the bedrooms. So if you have a 3-bedroom apartment home for, say, 1,000 square feet, which you can make them that size, versus a 3-bedroom townhome or a larger rental unit, which could be 2,000 square feet, the rents are the same. Well, that makes it very difficult for us developers to build bigger ones when you have to pay the price, when your income is limited to the small one. And what that does, it actually creates a housing discrimination, injustice, and equality against families. Well, not everybody moves to our area is a single person, could live in a small apartment. There are people who move in from out of state. The families have a wife and a couple of kids, dogs, they want to have a yard. Well, are we offering that opportunity for them? Issaquah is a beautiful place. I love the nature in Issaquah. I'm impressed. So are other people who want to call this place home. So what it does, it actually limits them. I think it's really good to think about in terms of different type of affordable homes, larger ones for families. Families could have a yard. For middle-income families, for the larger families, for ethnic families. I'm an Iranian immigrant. We came here. Well, my parents-in-law live with us. Well, does the small apartment we're building in downtown Issaquah provide enough housing for affordable families to live together, extended family members? So that's something I want you to think about. It may be too late in this round, but I thought I'd just bring it up. It doesn't hurt to think forward. The other one that I want to bring up, I really love the idea of electric homes, electric cars. That's the industry trend. That's what everything's moving, is nice. We do have that happening in our properties. A lot of people buying Teslas or electric cars going there. But, and I know you up them to 50%, that's nice. But have anybody ever thought about or checked into the demand that creates on the transformers, on the PSC? I don't know much about this. I know enough. But the little I know is when you are having a much higher demand, then you end up having a bigger transformer. When you have a bigger transformer, that means you end up have to pay more for the service. And as far as I know, the rates that the residents pay end up getting more. So again, I don't know what the answer to that is, but it's something that I think as a great city, you want to look into to make sure that you're not overstretching the electric grid. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great way to proceed. To give you an idea, a electric vehicle charging station will take about 40 amps. A brand new home, even the bigger homes are about 200 amps. So you're talking quite a bit of juice. And if you have to put 50% of your stations at 40 amp, that's a lot of demand. And the demand could be concentrated at certain times of the day, evening when people come back home. So something to think about. I think you ought to go forward. I don't think you got to go backward. I think you ought to proceed. That's a good direction, but somebody have to look into this thing to make sure that things doesn't go haywire down the road. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is a virtual attendee, Kay Elmer. Before we go to Kay, for anyone else who's attending virtually, if you'd like to make comments, if you're on the phone, please raise your hand by pressing *3. If you're attending by computer or smartphone, send me the hosted chat or select the small hand icon. And Kay, I will go ahead and make you a panelist now. You should have the option to unmute and can choose to turn your video on. Kay, you're muted.
Thank you. My name is Kay Elmer. I live at 2830 Northwest Pinecone Drive in Issaquah. And I just wanted to make a few comments about affordable housing. The first one is about the extension of the 50 years for homeowner. I support that. This is about the duration of the project. I had a question though about the rental units. It says they must remain affordable only as long as the project is in use for residential purposes. So I assume that means that if the owner chooses to do a condo conversion, that those units would no longer be available as affordable housing. And I think if that were to happen, and if that is allowed, of course, by law, then the owner should be responsible for paying some kind of penalty or compensation to the city since they received a public benefit based on their providing affordable housing units. I also did have a concern about the affordable housing units not being allowed to be smaller than 90% of the average size of the market rate housing unless approved by the designated official. I didn't understand why you would discriminate and make smaller units for low-income families or individuals than for the market rate participants. It felt somewhat discriminatory, and I understand it's driven by finances, but I think it's something that should be considered, especially given the minimum sizes that are being considered of 600 square feet for a one-bedroom unit, 800 square feet for two-bedroom. They're very small. I thought it was great that you removed the reduction of recreation space allowance. That just made absolutely no sense. I did have some concerns about the designated official. He has a lot of leeway in reading through the codes. He has a lot of leeway in making trade-offs. So I would hope that is a person that is also a clear supporter of affordable housing. One of my concerns was that, and perhaps this is just not understanding why this was done, but I noticed that the charts show the options for affordable housing at 70% AMI and 50% AMI. I understand those are probably the ceilings, but I was very concerned that there's not an inclusion of 30% AMI because the fact of the matter is the people who need it the most are the people who are the lowest income families. You know, it can be a working couple making minimal wage that would be excluded, or a senior citizen living on just Social Security. And we simply have nothing. I mean, everyone is squeezed by not having enough housing opportunity, but when you're in the very low income housing category, you have virtually no opportunity whatsoever. And so I would just like added consideration to be given to them. I also had concern about the motivation for off-site affordable units, only because it wasn't clear to me under what circumstances they would be granted and what the purpose would be, and what the benefit would be to the low-income families or the families in affordable housing. And one question I had is, and again, I just don't understand, but is there anything in the codes that would allow the kind of trade-off that happened several years ago, which if you've been around long enough, you remember, the units in a particular development, unnamed development, the units that were intended as affordable housing were traded off for road improvements and other benefits to the city. But the road improvements benefited the general population, I being one, and I thought they were wonderful road improvements. But it just felt to me like a reflection of our lack of attention and caring towards the people who are more deeply affected than we were by getting this benefit. And I'm just wondering what kind of trade-offs might be in the codes that I don't understand that would allow this to happen again, because I hope that would never happen again. It did not affect low income or families in affordable housing. This was not the recipient of this benefit.
Kay, this is Tisha. You've reached the 5-minute comment time.
Thank you.
And Chair, I understand there might be one more individual who's attending virtually who wants to make comments. Molly Bull. Molly, I think you might be the phone number listed here. It begins with 425-836. I'm going to unmute you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I originally had the general comment. Could I possibly talk about that at the time now? Because I didn't think you could hear me because I'm on a landline. That's why. But anyway, my name is Molly Bowl. I live in Trilogy on Redmond Ridge is a golf community. I am the
Ms. Bull.
Community Task Force on Homelessness founder, and I'd like to make a comment that I would like to ask your committee.
Ms. Bull?
Yes.
The chair has a quick comment for you.
Yeah, unfortunately, Ms. Bull, right now we are in a public hearing process. Okay. So right now the comments are specifically to what we are discussing for the record.
All right.
So right now is not, unfortunately, right now we can't take general public comments on different.
I'm going to send Christian, if it's okay, I'm going to send you an email if that's okay. Would be acceptable?
Absolutely. Kristen loves emails.
Okay, very good. Thank you, and I'm sorry to interrupt your meeting. I've been listening intently. I have a lot to say up in my email because I've been a vice president of a big seafood company, and I'm concerned about homelessness and affordable housing, etc. Amen.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Bull. Is there anyone else signed up to speak, Tisha?
Chair, no one else virtually has indicated a desire to speak, and I'll just ask, is there anyone else in the room here that'd like to speak under the public hearing? I'm not seeing any indication of an interest to speak in the room here.
Great, thank you, Tisha, and thank you, Mr. Coram, and thank you, Ms. Elmer. Again, very important part of the process. I know sometimes it can be difficult to stay in our lane, And right now, like I said, we have all these individual lanes because we have all these different boards and commissions, each with its own unique purview and things to do. So again, I know it can be hard, I know it can be difficult, but again, it's very appreciated. All the comments everyone's made tonight, we take to heart. Again, as I mentioned, all of us read everything we get. So I want to say thank you. And if that is truly it, we are going to close the public hearing tonight at 8:22 p.m. So now, for the rest of us, this is the deliberative portion of the meeting. And as I mentioned earlier, this is where the Development Commission gets to shine about all the topics we've talked about this evening, being the 4 presentations. I'd like to hand the meeting over to Vice Chair Brooke Shore to let her facilitate her own commission's deliberations. And I'd ask the Planning Policy Commission to please turn off their cameras. And then when they are finished, we will come back and move along with this evening's agenda. So please, Vice Chair Shore.
Thank you, Chair Voice. For the Development Commission deliberation, I propose we tackle each topic in order presented. The first items, which did not have specific policy questions posed, are there any comments Development Commission would like to make on transfer development rights?
I guess the question was, do they changes adequately address the goals and outcomes identified by the council? And I believe they do. Thank you.
Any other comments on transfer development rights? We can move on to affordable housing. Any comments on that topic?
I think in general, the proposed changes adequately address the goals and outcomes identified by the council, but I do have a question and concern about the elimination of the 30-year limit without consulting, especially banks and affordable housing developers. I would hate to see an unintended consequence of this rule be that banks would not finance projects with affordable housing in them, and it might actually backfire. So I think it would behoove the staff and for Planning Policy Commission to consider what the impact would be for sure if that was changed. Thank you.
And are there any comments on landmarks and archaeological resources? Looks like no comments. For the specific parking questions, is it possible to get those back on the screen and go through those? My comment on the first item, I think, yes, definitely, bike parking seems very elevated and emphasized, and I agree with Commissioner Morgan's earlier comment that the location seems rather restrictive, and there might need to be some exceptions to that based on the building type or size or something along those lines.
Just to add on the bike parking, I think some of those individual requirements could possibly be ors rather than ands in terms of the location and visibility protection of those bike parking areas. So it's just something to possibly review with that in mind.
I would say in answer to the 3 questions that are raised, I think the answer would be yes, but I would have 2 other comments. As I mentioned before, I think the shared parking agreements, we have found it works well between the Maple Street building and the Spring Hill Suites Hotel, so I think it's a great idea. And increasing it to 40% fits exactly with what had been done in the past with that, so I think that's a great idea to move that to 40%. The bike storage I do think is problematic and doesn't fit with what typical development would be for, especially for an office building. And I would suggest a change on page 85 of 121, item B2. It says located in one of the following secure locations, A, within 50 feet of an attendant or security guard, or B, in an area visible from employee work areas, or C, in an area visible from residential communal areas or living spaces. I would add item D that says within a building parking garage within 50 feet of an elevator. I think that's a very common thing that you would see in office buildings or residential towers with parking garages, and I think that would help alleviate that issue. Thank you.
On the EV and EV-ready parking stalls, without knowing the statistics on what's predicted, and I'm guessing you guys look at that sort of thing, but it seems like the EV-ready parking stalls could be increased just to give future capacity. It'd be a lot easier if it's done now than in the future.
I will call back to something that Mr. Hossein brought up, that there should be some study of the impacts on the electrical grid of development at this level for EV parking. If that doesn't create a huge excessive demand, then it seems reasonable. But again, and I guess another, sorry, adding on a slightly different comment, but that possibly providing incentives for creating some tiers and providing incentives maybe to go to a higher tier rather than a regulatory requirement.
I just have one other general comment that I thought the staff did a tremendous job putting this all together in a very readable and understandable manner for us to know what we were supposed to be doing and what we were looking at and explanations. I thought it was all very well done, and especially to Stephen for answering a lot of my other questions and comments, and I appreciate that addressing those. Thank you.
Any other Development Commission comments? Okay. Chair voice, that concludes the Development Commission's deliberation. I want to remind the Development Commission that there's one more item on tonight's agenda that staff would like feedback from the Development Commission on.
Thank you, Vice Chair Shore. And thank you, Development Commission, again, for deliberating and for being part of the process. This is odd. This is my first hybrid meeting. I've had a lot of meetings, a lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of in-person meetings, but this is my first hybrid meeting. So it's been interesting and it's been fun. And as Ms. Shore had alluded, it looks like we do have another presentation, and this is going to be the Climate Action Plan and Title 18. Minnie will be basically presenting this for us, and then we're going to do the same thing as we've done all night. We'll be doing clarifying questions from the commissioners. But because this is not a public hearing, not all questions have to be asked tonight, but the more questions, the better discussion. And then once we are done, again, we'll take public comment, hopefully on, again, Minnie's presentation. and then Development Commission will again have a chance to deliberate. And then again, we will tack this on as far as planning policies deliberation at our next meeting next Thursday in chambers. So please, Ms. Dhaliwal has a presentation for us. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. Thank you, commissioners and members of the community. So this is a topic, climate action plan that council adopted at the end of last year. Has a tie-in with certain things that were going to be captured with Title 18 update. So in your packet, we've included a table that we prepared for the council committee. They asked us to look at that based on public feedback they had received. So we've captured the things that are being addressed that had a specific call in the climate action plan and tied it with the items that were anticipated to be done with Title 18 update. One of the goals of Title 18 update, Goal 9, is to have codes that promote sustainable development and meet our climate action plan goals. And so just a little bit of history, and I'm not sure if Development Commission was part of that, but when we did the gaps analysis back last year with the Planning and Policy Commission, we posed some questions at a higher level of how do we address some of these things. So at the time, we talked about perhaps embedding sustainability throughout different sections of the code. So the tree preservation would have a higher focus and a filter for how is going to meet the climate action goals. The landscaping would have more drought tolerant species requirement and such. So it was more prescriptive where we could be throughout in different chapters of the code. We also talked about an incentives versus prescriptive approach. And also talked about maybe creating an Issaquah sustainability score where you would have to meet a minimum score and you could get certain points for getting third-party certifications for green building, enhanced green stormwater. If you went above and beyond, then you would get some credits or points for it. If you took extra measures for going above and beyond, extra flooding protection or wildfire resilience, that kind of a sustainability score. And we talked about pros and cons of the different approaches, and it would be a flexible yet you could verify under that approach. However, there was a lot of unknowns, and we didn't know if people would take on certain things would become more popular and others won't get used. So we need to have more thoughtful discussion if we go down that sustainability score approach. So since our conversation with all of you, Council adopted the Climate Action Plan and had specific things that were called out as Title 18 updates, so which we've provided a status update for you. Separate from the Title 18, what's happening is also the State Building Code Council adopted a new energy code for multifamily and commercial buildings. And that's going to go into effect June of next year. And some of the things that are coming out of that are, how do we have more high energy efficient buildings? There's a requirement for heat pump, for water heater and space heaters instead of relying on fossil fuels. There's requirements for solar readiness. Anything over 10,000 square feet of building has to have on-site renewable energy. Indoor lighting has to, be manageable, and motion sensors and those kind of requirements are coming in, and it's all based on reducing, making highly energy efficient buildings. So that's happening in the building code, which is in the Title 16 of the Issaquah Municipal Code. So given all the different pieces, we did the peer city research and have included in your packet. The one takeaway from that is most of our peer cities at this point in time have this incentives-based approach where they're really saying you can build taller buildings, you can have more development capacity if you do greener buildings. So not sure that that's what is the right policy given where the climate action plan is and all those long-term policies that Issaquah has adopted. And the history of sustainable buildings in Issaquah, we've had the Swedish hospital, the fire stations, the development in our that was captured under a development agreement for Highlands and Talus had a third-party certification requirements for these homes to meet. We had the Z homes as the, pilot project that was built. We have a laminated timber building in the popular building for the Rowley development. So a lot of buildings and construction that happened in the past, new construction has kind of been on the sustainable side. So given all that history, we're proposing to you a two-tiered approach. So a more thoughtful approach, given the energy code updates that are coming our way, given that the incentives-based approach is not where the commission was leaning when we first had the policy discussion with you all, and that's what most of our peer cities are doing. We're recommending that we have larger buildings at this time be required to get a third-party certification. So if someone's building a larger building, that it is more sustainable. And then we put on the whiteboard future updates topic that we're more thoughtful of the, whether it's a sustainability score for projects that are smaller. Because what we've also heard is that these certifications are expensive. So they add more to the cost of getting certification, that there are equivalent ways of building more sustainable buildings that don't require this third-party certification. So our recommendation at this time is, with this current update, we handle the larger buildings, and that came through some of your discussion where you asked us to look at SEPA thresholds, and maybe there's a trade-off that if you do a sustainable building, yes, it's going to cost you slightly more if we require third-party certifications. However, we're raising our SEPA thresholds for sustainable buildings. And we laid in your packet, and I can share my screen if it's useful, on the three options. One is to anything larger than 10,000. The second is anything larger than 20,000. And then the third one is anything larger than 30,000. So you all can decide what threshold at this time makes sense to require third-party certifications until we have a more thoughtful discussion as a future update. After the energy code is up, it comes into place. And this is only for building. So we had a placeholder in the building and design section of the code that you all had a public hearing on. But the other sections of the code we've embedded and have taken a more prescriptive approach for meeting the climate action goals. So that's all in terms of our ask of you for this topic, to give us some guidance. Then we can fold it in the building and design section accordingly.
Great, thank you, Minnie. So looking for some clarifying questions for Minnie as far as her presentation. And
Chair
then
Voice.
to her delivery. Yes.
Director Dhaliwal, I wanted to mention that it appears that the Climate Action Plan implementation content was not included in the Development Commission's agenda materials for tonight's meeting. So the commissioners may not have had an opportunity to review that material. It was included in the published PPC agenda.
Okay. Do you want me to bring up the table? That may be helpful for the development commissioners.
Yes.
Okay. I would need to be the participant or share. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So there are two questions to ponder. One is, we're looking for, is this the right approach to have some stopgap measures to address climate action plan by requiring larger buildings to meet third-party certification? So if you have an opinion on that, that would be good to share. The second question is the threshold, and our recommendation is anything larger than 20,000 square feet, we can add language in the code to require third-party certifications, and we can give them an option So it could be LEED Gold certified or equivalent. So it's not just one, as things could change. They would have to give us how they are equivalent, and we would review it. So we can work out some of those details related to that. Some of the other little nuances or details that we talked about was that we, in trade for requiring sustainable buildings, the incentive would be that we would raise the SEPA threshold that for some of these projects up to a certain maximum allowed under the state law. We would streamline their process. We would also, you talked about affordable housing today and how hard it is to cobble up the funding and everything to finance those things. So we would look for some other ways for cost-saving measures for affordable housing if we are going to require a third-party certification for affordable housing projects. But the thresholds, we'd shared this with the Planning and Policy Commission, and I apologize to Development Commission for not having this in their packet. But basically, under the state law, there's a maximum threshold for projects that are required to go through State Environmental Policy Act. So what that does is really reviews it for any impacts that need to be mitigated that are not covered by our existing codes. And for single-family homes, the maximum threshold is 30 units. Issaquah currently has 4 units as our threshold. Some of our peer cities have a little bit larger. Multifamily, again, our existing code has 4 units, but we can go up to 60 units. For commercial buildings, anything larger than 4,000 requires SEPA and Issaquah. The maximum threshold that we can raise it to is 30,000 square feet. So our recommendation is anything less than, larger than 10 units or 20,000 square feet would be, so we would raise it from 4 units to 10 units and from 4,000 to 20,000 square feet in exchange for projects that have a third-party green building certification. So those are the comparisons of the thresholds.
All right, as long as the Development Commission still feels comfortable moving on with this, we will take clarifying questions as far as Minnie's presentation. And then again, we'll hand it over for deliberations to the Development Commission. Again, if they feel comfortable. I know they hadn't had as much time to look this over as I'm sure they'd want, but if they feel comfortable, we can move forward. And again, they can ask as many questions as they'd like.
Is it possible, can we ask questions, but if after we review the document in more detail, can we send additional email questions or comments? Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, I think we can proceed.
My understanding is it's not a public hearing, so again, all questions, this is just to inform the conversation. So again, questions are still able to be submitted. Again, it's not a public hearing, so. But if the Development Commission feels good about it, we can move forward with at least getting some questions in today, some deliberations, because again, as Benny pointed out, this will end up coming back to us. And again, Planning Policy will be deliberating on this next Thursday. So I see that, and I guess Development Commission can kind of whisper amongst themselves how they want to go with this. But Commissioner Milligan does have a question.
Okay, I think we're okay with proceeding here.
Great. Thank you, Chair Voice. Nina Milligan, Planning Policy Commission. My question is, and I'm going to preface it with a comment. I'm glad that we're going to continue talking about this because I must say I'm not getting my arms around this. I don't really feel like I can substantially contribute to this conversation. 2 things I'm looking for are ease of interpretation of our code so that things have, so that we don't have a threshold for this over here and we have a different threshold for that over there. And then for this thing, you got a different threshold. I think that makes it difficult. We want ease of interpreting our code. But one thing about exempting smaller buildings that I was unable to get the answer myself, so maybe one of you have it, is that for certifications such as, let's say, Built Green, do they charge just a flat fee, or is it based on the size of the building? Is the smaller building charged less for a certification than a larger building?
You know, I don't know the specifics of the cost of how much it is, but we can find out. I imagine it is going to be based on some, larger building obviously there's more nuance to it, but a single family home that's 3,000 square feet versus 2,000 square feet, I'm not sure there will be much of a difference there. Yeah. But we can look into that and get you some more information.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to know what the basis is for removing them. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Milligan. Anyone else? Questions?
Patty Dillon with the Development Commission, and this may be information that has some more background in the packet, but I'll look into that once we receive that. In terms of the threshold for SEPA exemption being tied to the green buildings, there are a lot of aspects of SEPA beyond just the building itself in terms of the other land uses on a parcel. So just wanting some clarification whether that would be an exemption from that permitting process altogether, or an exemption from some of the aspects related to the building itself.
Yeah, good question. So it would be completely SEPA exempt. It won't be you have to do part of the SEPA analysis, but not the complete. So, but the state law, as you can see, has established higher thresholds, and our peer cities have kept up with increasing their thresholds. So it would be the complete evaluation of all the impacts. But the ecology in the state that came up with these thresholds did a more thorough analysis, and from their analysis, they deemed that there wasn't SEPA mitigation required for all of these smaller ones. It became just a procedural thing. So therefore, they raised some of these thresholds.
Thank you.
Chair Voice, we have another question here in the room from Commissioner Morgan.
Please.
Thank you. So as I understand it then, if I want to build a 19,000 square foot office building, I don't have to go through the SEPA process if I make it LEED Gold, salmon safe, and perhaps eco-friendly building materials?
That's correct.
Okay, and I still have to meet all the other code requirements for development of the building as well, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I had a question regarding the threshold, and if it's lifted, what about other environmental overlays that might exist on a given site, critical areas? So if those are present, do you still need some level of review?
Correct. So, the SEPA is something that, was established in 1970s when jurisdictions didn't have all their codes updated, state law wasn't updated. So now the cities have come along, and there's actually a requirement to meet best available science and have all of these codes for protection of critical areas. So that's going to be a separate chapter in the municipal code. There is requirement to comply with those codes. SEPA evaluates anything that generally isn't addressed by our existing adopted codes. So if we didn't have a critical area section, we could use SEPA as a tool to require mitigation. Or if the cumulative impact of this development for, it's a project that really falls through the cracks from our code, and there's a gray area, and and we need to use SEPA as a tool for requiring some mitigation, then jurisdictions use SEPA. So it's more comprehensive, but projects are still required to meet all the adopted codes, including critical areas.
Perfect. Thank you.
Chair Voice, there are no other questions here in the room.
All right, and I'm not seeing any other questions in the virtual room. All right, well, thank you, Development Commission. Now we're going to open it up for public comment. Again, this is not a public hearing, so we're looking for comment to help facilitate a better discussion. After that, again, Development Commission will deliberate, Planning Policy will turn off the cameras, and again, then we'll start wrapping up tonight's meeting. So do we have anyone signed up for public comment for this portion of the meeting?
I see one person in the room who'd like to make comments, and then for our virtual attendees, if you're on the phone and would like to address this topic, please press *3. If you're joining by computer, please raise your hand. Hussein?
Mr. Chair, Director Dhaliwal, fellow commissioners, lovely staff, thanks for having me again. I just wanted to weigh in on this. I'm a mechanical engineer. I work with the Boeing Company. I work for the military, U.S. military, and I love the energy stuff. I just, like a kid in a candy store. So when I see this stuff, I really enjoy it. So thanks for giving me this opportunity. But I do want to let you know, you're on the right track. And I want to give you a little more confidence that the lenders, the large lenders like Fannie Mae, possibly Freddie Mac, they have discounts for LEED certification. They're range between 10 to 20 basis points. So when you make these big buildings, you're talking about 20 basis points. That's significant. So that's another added benefit. Yes, the certification costs money, but in the grand scheme of things, that saving of 20 basis points, 10 to 20 basis points, just take care of all the expenses with about 2 years, 2 to 3 years at most. So it pays for itself. I encourage you to go to do it. I think it's important. There was one thing I wanted to bring up to you, and that is, you always got to think why we're doing this and who are we doing this for. It's important to have flexibility in the Title 18 that you're going to be considering to adopt. I haven't looked at the entire thing, but there are, provisions that could really kill a project. It could really stop it. It could be bad fortune. I have been lately on receiving end of this thing here, and I'm kind of lucky. I didn't get stuck with a raft of things, but sometimes it could go sideways. So on your code, try to adopt ways out for somebody who's cornered for an environmental situation with added benefit that he can gain going another path. I don't know if, for example, tree preservations is in your code being reviewed or not. But if you have 4 big trees in the middle of the site, one of them you have to keep, that means you can't put your building there in the middle of the site. That could be really painful. Again, I don't know if it is or not, but if it is, then that's something you want to consider. What other ways you can serve the public and help the environment? What other ways that you can achieve that goal and offset that deficiency is something you may want to think about. So I urge you, never forget your goal. Your goal is to serve the public, and try to be flexible. Look at different variety of options and visions, and choose a path that will get you there with the least amount of resistance. And I think that concludes my comments. I really appreciate your patience with me. Thank you very much.
Chair, I don't see that anyone virtually is interested in making comments, and just looking to see if there's anyone else in the room. Not seeing any interest.
All right. Well, thank you again for our lone speaker, our lone public comment this evening. And we will now hand it back over to Vice Chair Shore to facilitate her deliberations with her commission. So planning policy, please go ahead and go dark. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Voice. For the Development Commission deliberations, we will go through the policy questions posed by staff and then provide any additional comments or deliberations. And I think I have the comments, but I don't, or the questions, but I don't think anybody else does. If we could see those again.
Commissioner Patty Dillon, in response to the first question, do you agree with the proposed approach to incorporate some measures in the current update? From what Director Dhaliwal presented, I think that sounds like a logical pathway. I also appreciated the concept of incorporating sustainability throughout the Title 18 document. I think she mentioned at the beginning, sustainability really is part of a whole process and not just something that we want to separate out into its own section. It's part of coming up with the design and the function of the entire site. So I would agree with that approach. Certainly, given the information from neighboring cities, the suggested threshold seems appropriate, but I don't have the background research to make that a recommendation, I guess.
Commissioner Morgan, I think this sounds like a good idea. It's kind of a quick read right now, but it does sound like a good idea to me to, as a way to incorporate, to get more green buildings, more salmon-safe buildings, perhaps some more sustainable materials. Sounds like it fits with other jurisdictions and with what they found on a state code basis. So I would agree with it. The one change I would suggest is for office, school, commercial, service, recreation, so forth, the requirement would be up to 20,000 square feet and up to 40 parking spaces. The parking code earlier in the presentation did not have a specific commercial office section, but there was a medical office section. The minimum parking for medical office is 1 per 300 square feet, I believe it is, which for a 20,000 square foot building would require 67 parking stalls, which I think means you would not be able to build a 20,000 square foot building because you would have to have far more than 40 stalls. I think it means you would be limited to only a 12,000 square foot building if you can only do it up to 40 parking stalls. So I think I would suggest reconsidering the 40 parking spaces requirement and have that fit with parking stall requirements so you can actually get up to 20,000 square feet. Thank you.
Vice Chair Shore, I also agree with requiring the third-party certifications for larger buildings. I defer to others on the appropriate size of those. But I don't agree with tying the SEPA threshold to the third-party certifications. If there are changes needed to the threshold to be current, then I think those thresholds should just be updated across the code, not just this small section.
I'm in full support of everything that was outlined.
Any further comments? Chair voice, I believe we're done.
Thank you, Vice Chair Shore. So the rest of the meeting is going to go quick. We rounded third base. We're coming in to home. Looking for reports and any city council updates from staff. If you could provide us any reports.
No reports at this time, other than, the committee has asked us to come back to you with this ICAP discussion, and also we'll have another discussion on zero lot lines and subdivision grid at your next upcoming meeting on the 28th. So that's all.
Any other updates or comments from staff?
No, but I really want to appreciate everyone digging in at the last minute from the development commissioners on a topic. So we'll make sure we send all that information over to you, and we'll look for opportunity to dig deeper if that's needed. But appreciate all the feedback.
Great, thank you, Minnie. Any comments, anything from any of our commissioners tonight for the good of our order? All right, well, I just wanted to extend my thank you to city
Excuse
staff.
me. There was one
Go ahead.
comment from Commissioner Morgan.
Commissioner Morgan, please.
I would just like to once again thank the Planning Policy Commission for letting us chime in on these items. We appreciate all the work that you do. It's very detailed and hardworking, and thank you for letting us voice some opinions about them. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan, and I think I can safely speak for my commission that you guys provide a indispensable service, and again, we really enjoy the time together. I want to just say thank you to city staff. Thank you to our commissions and our commissioners, Development Commission, Planning Policy Commission, and also everyone who made public comment this evening. Again, it takes a village, and we have a lot of people here trying to make this city the best we can, not only for us, but for future generations. So again, thank you very much. As far as Planning Policy Commission, I am looking forward to seeing all of you guys next week, next Thursday. Mark your calendars in city chambers. It'll be a good time. I believe it'll be the first time since March of 2020. Some of you, the first time I've actually ever met you in person. So again, looking forward to all of that and wishing you guys all a good weekend. And tonight we're going to adjourn this meeting at 9:04. So thank you, everyone, and have a good evening. Good night.